You have been lied to, not by one person, not by one coach, not by one supplement company. You have been lied to by an entire system of fitness advice that was never designed for you in the first place. Because here is the truth, almost nobody in the gym is willing to say out loud. After 60, building muscle is not just harder. It is different. Fundamentally different. The rules change, the recovery timeline changes, the hormonal environment changes, the way your muscles respond to food changes, even the way your nervous system recruits, strength begins to change. And if you keep following advice built for 25-year-olds with high testosterone, perfect recovery, and a body that still responds to almost anything, you are not just wasting effort. You are working against your own biology. That is the part that should stop you cold. Because research has shown over and over again that adults lose roughly 3 to 8% of their muscle mass per decade, and that rate tends to accelerate after 60. Every decade, if nothing changes, you are not just losing size. You are losing strength. You are losing power. You are losing balance. You are losing resilience. You are losing the metabolic armor that helps protect you from frailty, falls, insulin resistance, hospitalization, and dependency. And most men trying to fight back are using strategies that make the problem worse. They train too often. They recover too poorly. They eat too little protein at the wrong times. They ignore sleep. They ignore inflammation. They assume soreness means success. They chase exhaustion instead of adaptation. That ends today. In the next several minutes, you are going to discover 4 revelations about building muscle after 60 that the fitness industry has ignored, misunderstood, or buried beneath generic advice. The first will explain why your body is not responding the way you expected, and it has nothing to do with laziness or lack of discipline. The second is about a hormone almost everyone talks about in shallow, dishonest ways, but very few people explain properly. The third is a mistake so common that almost every well-intentioned man over 60 is making it while believing he is doing everything right. The fourth is the force working quietly, underneath all of it, stealing progress before you even realize it. And then right at the end, I am going to give you a 5th insight. An unexpected one. A hopeful one. Something the research is only beginning to sharpen, and once you understand it, it will completely change how you approach your next training session. Stay with me until the end. That final insight alone may save you months, maybe years, of frustration. I'm Dr. Henrik Jonas Adler, and if you are a man over 60 who still wants to build real strength, preserve independence, and feel at home in your own body again, this video is for you. Let's begin Revelation 1. The anabolic resistance trap. Picture this. You finish a solid workout. You pushed hard. You stayed focused. You come home, drink your shake, eat your chicken, maybe add some eggs or yogurt, and you feel like you did everything exactly the way you were told. And then your body does almost nothing with it. Not because you failed. Not because you lacked discipline. Not because you did not want it badly enough, but because the machinery inside your muscle cells has changed. This is called anabolic resistance, and if you have never heard that phrase before, that alone tells you how badly fitness advice has failed older men. Here is what it means in plain English. When you eat protein, your body is supposed to break it down into amino acids and use those amino acids to repair and rebuild muscle tissue. In a younger man, that signal is clear and efficient. Protein goes in, the message gets received, and the muscle-building response is strong. After 60, the signal still gets sent, but the receiving end has gone partially deaf. Your muscles do not respond to protein the same way they used to. The result is cruelly simple. You can eat what once worked, do the same workout that once worked, and still get a weaker result from both. And while that is happening, muscle breakdown does not politely slow down to compensate. In many aging adults, the body remains relatively efficient at breaking muscle down, while becoming less efficient at building it back up. So now you are in a situation where you are trying to assemble tissue with a weakened construction signal, while demolition is still happening in the background. That is why so many men over 60 say some version of the same thing. I'm working hard, but my body is not responding. And they usually assume the problem is effort. It is not effort, it is strategy. Now this gets even more important after a period of inactivity, a surgery, a flu, a stressful few months, a back issue, an injury, a season of life where the gym slipped away. After 60, those interruptions hit harder. The the body becomes more resistant to rebuilding after disuse. So when you come back, you are not just resuming where you left off. In many cases, you are climbing uphill against a stronger biological headwind. But here is the good news, and this changes everything. Anabolic resistance is not a locked door. It is a stiff door, and the right approach can push it open. Older muscle often needs a stronger signal. That means more intentional training and more intelligently structured protein intake. One of the biggest mistakes older men make is assuming the old 20 to 30 grams of protein is enough for any meal rule still applies cleanly to them. For many men over 60, it does not. Aging muscle often needs a bigger push. That means aiming for more meaningful protein at each meal, especially around training, instead of spreading tiny amounts randomly through the day and hoping it adds up. And quality matters too. Not all protein sources are equally effective at triggering muscle protein synthesis. Your body is not grading your effort. It is responding to actual amino acid availability, especially leucine-rich protein sources that flip the internal switch for repair and growth. So here is the practical shift. Stop thinking only about total daily protein. Start thinking about effective protein doses. If your breakfast is toast and coffee, your lunch is a sandwich with a little turkey, and your dinner has one decent serving of protein, you may technically be eating protein, but you may not be sending strong enough signals often enough to matter. And after 60, weak signals do not win. This is not cosmetic. This is not about chasing beach muscles. Muscle is metabolic insurance. It stabilizes joints. It protects bones. It helps regulate blood sugar. It preserves balance. It keeps you capable. And when muscle loss progresses far enough, it has a name: sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is not just weakness, it is vulnerability. So if you take one thing from this first revelation, take this. Your body is not ignoring you because it is broken. It is responding exactly the way an older body responds when given signals that are too small, too inconsistent, or mistimed. The answer is not despair. The answer is stronger, smarter input. And what makes that even more urgent is the second revelation. Because your muscles do not just listen to food, they listen to hormones. Revelation 2. The testosterone decline nobody explained. Honestly, imagine a factory that has run reliably for decades. For years, the machines were fast. Output was strong. Repairs happened quickly. The system could absorb stress and bounce back. And overseeing much of that operation was testosterone, not as some macho buzzword, not as a marketing gimmick, as a real biological regulator of drive, repair, recovery, motivation, libido, energy, body composition, and muscle maintenance. Now imagine that the chief engineer in that factory has been quietly leaving earlier every year. No announcement, no dramatic siren, no one telling you clearly what is happening, just slower output, more breakdown, less responsiveness, less momentum. That is what testosterone decline often feels like. It is rarely experienced as one dramatic event. Instead, most men experience it as a slow dimming. Recovery takes longer, fat accumulates more easily. Motivation feels flatter. Training feels harder to sustain, sleep may worsen, drive softens, strength becomes harder to hold on to, and because it happens gradually, many men interpret it as normal aging and never look deeper. But let us be clear, testosterone decline is real, and after 60 it matters. Muscle cells carry androgen receptors. When testosterone binds to those receptors, it helps support repair, retention, and growth. When testosterone drops, the muscle-building environment becomes less favorable. That does not mean muscle building becomes impossible. It means the body becomes less forgiving. You can no longer rely on momentum. Now, here is the part that should make you angry. This decline is not always happening in a vacuum. Many modern men are not simply aging. They are aging inside an environment that is amplifying the problem. Poor sleep, chronic stress, sedentary living, highly processed food, excess body fat, low sunlight exposure, constant stimulation, metabolic dysfunction. All of these things can worsen the hormonal picture. So sometimes what men call just getting older is actually a combination of aging and a modern lifestyle that is quietly suppressing vitality from every direction. And one of the biggest saboteurs is visceral belly fat. Not because it looks bad, because it acts badly. Visceral fat is not inert storage. It is metabolically active tissue. It influences inflammation, it affects insulin sensitivity, it disrupts hormonal balance, and it contributes to the very environment that makes testosterone harder to maintain. So now you get a brutal loop. Lower testosterone makes it easier to gain fat. More visceral fat helps suppress healthy testosterone signaling. The body becomes less anabolic and more inflammatory. Muscle slips away while fat accumulates, and because the shift is slow, it can go unnoticed for years. But here is where hope comes back into the picture. Resistance training still works. In fact, properly dosed resistance training remains one of the most powerful natural signals you can give the male body after 60. Not because it magically turns you back into your 25-year-old self, but because it tells the body, clearly and repeatedly, that this tissue is still needed. Muscle that is used gets a message. Hormones respond to signals, bodies adapt to demand, and that means you are not powerless. Get your levels tested if you suspect a problem. Do not guess blindly. Protect your sleep like it matters, because it does. Much of your hormonal recovery depends on deep sleep. Train consistently with real effort 2 or 3 times per week. Address waistline fat not out of vanity, but out of respect for the endocrine system you are trying to preserve. The point is not panic. The point is honesty. If your hormones have changed, then your strategy must change too. And that leads directly into the third revelation, because this is where many motivated men sabotage themselves with the very best intentions. Revelation 3. The recovery myth that is destroying progress here is one of the hardest truths for disciplined men to accept. After 60, most failure in the gym does not come from undertraining, it comes from overtraining with under-recovery. That difference changes everything. A lot of men over 60 become newly motivated. Maybe there was a health scare. Maybe they looked in the mirror and did not like what they saw. Maybe retirement gave them more time. Maybe they simply reached a point where they refused to feel weak anymore. And motivation can be a beautiful thing. But motivation without biological understanding can become self-sabotage. So what happens? A man decides he is going all in. He trains 5 days a week. He pushes through soreness because he remembers the old culture that said soreness equals growth. He adds extra sets because more must be better. He refuses rest because rest feels soft. At first he feels proud. Then a few weeks later, the joints begin talking back. The shoulders ache, the knees complain, sleep becomes less refreshing. Energy outside the gym drops. Mood gets flatter. Progress stalls. Then comes the strain, the flare-up, the tweak, the little injury that becomes the reason he stops again. And when it all falls apart, he blames his age. But age is not always the villain. Mismanaged recovery is. Here is the biological reality. Your body still adapts after 60, but the clock is different. The repair process is slower. Tissue turnover is different. Inflammatory resolution is slower. Hormonal recovery is less forgiving. The stimulus may need to be strong, but the recovery window often needs to be longer. In other words, you still have to challenge the body. But you cannot keep treating your body like a machine that resets overnight, because it does not. This is where most gym culture completely fails older men. It glorifies fatigue and treats recovery as if it were the passive absence of training. That is nonsense. Recovery is not the gap between workouts. Recovery is where the adaptation happens. The workout is the request. Recovery is the answer. When you lift weights, you are not building muscle in that moment. You are creating the reason for the body to build later. If the body does not get enough sleep, enough nutrients, enough time, and enough nervous system calm to respond to that signal, the result is not growth, it is accumulated wear. And sleep sits at the center of this more than many men realize. Deep sleep is not optional fluff. It is biological repair time. Hormonal balance depends on it. Tissue restoration depends on it. Your ability to recover from hard training depends on it. A man training 3 focused, well-designed sessions per week with high-quality sleep may build more muscle than a man training 5 or 6 days while living in a state of constant fatigue. That is not laziness, that is intelligent adaptation. So here is the practical shift. Train fewer days if needed, but train those days with real purpose. Build at least 48 hours between hard sessions for the same muscle groups. Stop chasing exhaustion. Stop confusing depletion with effectiveness. Learn the difference between muscular challenge and systemic burnout, and listen carefully to this because it matters. Soreness is not a trophy. Joint pain is not courage. Chronic fatigue is not discipline. If your elbows, knees, shoulders, or lower back are constantly sending warning signals, that is not proof of your commitment. It is information. And ignoring information is how strong men become injured men. This matters because after 60, injuries are not mere interruptions. They can become turning points. One bad fall, one serious strain, one long layoff. The cost rises with age, not because you are fragile, but because the recovery landscape becomes more complicated. So if you are serious about muscle, become serious about recovery. That means structured rest, that means sleep, that means enough calories, that means not turning every session into a war, because your body does not reward punishment, it rewards adaptation. And there is a fourth force that interferes with adaptation, even when training and recovery look decent on paper. It is quieter than poor programming, more invisible than fatigue. And it may be stealing muscle from you every single day. Revelation 4, the invisible enemy. Chronic inflammation. There is a slow fire burning inside many men over 60. Most do not see it, many do not feel it directly. Almost nobody in mainstream fitness explains its role clearly enough. It is called chronic low-grade inflammation, and it is one of the most underappreciated barriers to muscle preservation and muscle growth in aging men. Now, to understand this, we need to make a crucial distinction. Not all inflammation is bad. The inflammation that rises locally after a hard workout can be useful. It is part of the repair signal. It helps trigger adaptation. It tells the body that work was done and resources are needed. That is normal. Chronic systemic inflammation is different. It is not a helpful repair response. It is background noise that never fully shuts off. A low, persistent biological stress signal running through the body day after day. And when that inflammatory environment stays active long enough, it begins to interfere with muscle health in multiple ways. It can worsen muscle breakdown, impair insulin sensitivity, reduce recovery efficiency, influence hormones, and make the body less willing to direct resources toward building tissue. In simple terms, your body begins living in a chemistry that favors erosion more than renewal. And where does this chronic inflammation come from? Everywhere modern life is failing you: ultra-processed food, poor sleep, stress that never resolves, low movement outside the gym, visceral fat, excess sugar, alcohol abuse, social isolation, chronic overwork, unmanaged metabolic disease. All of these can feed the fire, and one of the biggest drivers is body fat around the midsection. Again, not because of aesthetics, but because visceral fat actively releases inflammatory molecules. It is not just stored energy. It behaves more like an endocrine participant in your decline. That means the belly is not simply extra weight you are carrying. It may be sending chemical signals that are actively making it harder to build and preserve muscle. Now you begin to see the full picture. Anabolic resistance reduces your response to food. Testosterone decline weakens the internal signal. Poor recovery prevents adaptation. Chronic inflammation keeps the system tilted toward breakdown. This is why generic advice fails, because it addresses one piece while ignoring the ecosystem. Here is the encouraging part. The solutions are often far less glamorous than the industry wants you to believe. You do not need a shelf full of miracle powders, you need physiology on your side. Omega-3 rich foods can help support a healthier inflammatory balance. Fatty fish, walnuts, flax, and similar foods matter because they influence the environment your muscles live in. Vitamin D matters too. Many older adults run low, especially if they spend less time outdoors. And vitamin D is not just about bones. It plays a role in muscle function, strength, and overall metabolic health. Then there is food quality. If the majority of your diet comes from boxes, wrappers, drive-through windows, and convenience foods, you are asking your body to build itself from materials that constantly inflame it. Your muscle is built from what you feed it. Your hormones are influenced by what you feed them. Your recovery is shaped by what you feed your cells. And stress belongs in this conversation just as much as food does. Chronic psychological stress raises cortisol, and cortisol in excess and over time is catabolic. It breaks down tissue, it disturbs sleep, it alters blood sugar, it disrupts recovery. It makes the body feel unsafe, and bodies that feel unsafe do not invest confidently in growth. So if you are trying to build muscle after 60 while living on poor sleep, high stress, processed food, and constant inflammation, you are not running uphill. You are running uphill in mud. This is why men sometimes do everything right in the gym and still see little change. Because the gym is only 1 hour of the day. The other 23 hours decide whether that hour mattered. So handle inflammation at the roots, clean up the food quality, get vitamin D checked, Increase anti-inflammatory whole foods, sleep like your muscle depends on it, reduce waistline fat patiently, and stop acting as if stress management is soft. Stress management is muscle preservation, because the long-term consequence of chronic inflammation and muscle loss is not merely looking smaller in a t-shirt. It is functional dependence, it is stairs becoming difficult, it is carrying groceries becoming harder, it is rising from the floor becoming uncertain, it is falling and not recovering the same way. It is watching independence leak away one physical compromise at a time. That is what is at stake. You now understand 4 revelations most men your age were never properly taught, but I promised you a 5th insight, and this is the one I want you to carry into your very next workout. Revelation 5. Your body still remembers. Strength. This is the part I need you to hear with your full attention, because after everything we have discussed, it would be easy to come away thinking the body after 60 is all decline, all resistance, all struggle. That is not true. Here is the 5th insight. Your body still remembers strength, even after layoffs, even after illness, even after years of inconsistency, even after muscle loss. The research on muscle memory is still evolving, but one thing is becoming increasingly clear. When muscle has been built before, the body does not always forget as completely as people assume. There are lasting cellular adaptations. There are retained learning patterns in the nervous system. There are structural traces of prior training that may make rebuilding faster than first-time building. That means when an older man returns to training, he is not always starting from nothing. He may be returning to something his body still recognizes. And even if you have never seriously trained before, there is another powerful truth here. The nervous system itself is trainable far beyond what most people think. Strength is not only about muscle size, it is also about recruitment, coordination, confidence, the efficiency with which your body calls muscle into action. This is why some men begin feeling stronger before they look dramatically different. The nervous system is learning. The body is reawakening. Dormant capacity is being brought back online. And this changes how you should approach your next workout. Do not walk into the gym thinking, I am too old to build. Walk in thinking, my body still responds to clear signals. Do not think only about punishing muscle. Think about teaching your body to trust strength again. Lift with control, lift with intention, move the weight like it matters. Let the body experience force, stability, and competence. Because the men who transform after 60 are not always the men with the perfect genetics or the biggest training history. They are the men who become consistent enough, patient enough, and informed enough to let the body relearn what strength feels like. That is the hidden edge, hope backed by biology. Not fantasy, not hype, not denial. Real adaptation. So let us bring this home. You came into this video maybe believing that building muscle after 60 was mostly about trying harder, grinding more, or finding the perfect routine. And maybe some part of you had already begun to wonder if the door was simply closed. It is not closed. Today you learned that anabolic resistance is real, but it can be overcome with stronger protein signaling and better timing. You learned that testosterone decline matters, but it is not the end of the story, especially when you train, sleep, and reduce visceral fat intelligently. You learned that recovery is not weakness. It is the very place where muscle gets built. You learned that chronic inflammation is the invisible thief, quietly stealing progress unless you address food quality, stress, sleep, and metabolic health. And finally, you learned something most men desperately need to hear. Your body is still capable of responding, not like a young man's body, but still powerfully, still meaningfully, still enough to change your life. You are not past your chance, you are past generic advice. That is different. This is who you are now. A man who trains smart, a man who recovers deliberately, a man who respects biology instead of fighting it blindly, a man who wants strength not for ego, but for life, for walking well, for carrying well, for standing tall, for traveling, for playing with grandchildren, for staying independent, for looking in the mirror and recognizing capability again. If this gave you something real today, subscribe. This channel is for the man who is done with shallow advice. The man who wants the real science behind strength, muscle, recovery, and longevity after 60. And now I want to hear from you. Which of these hit you hardest? Was it anabolic resistance, the testosterone reality, the recovery mistake, the inflammation problem, Or that final insight, the fact that your body may still remember far more strength than you thought it could. Leave it in the comments. And in the next video, we are going deep into the specific kind of training that helps reactivate the fast-twitch muscle fibers most men over 60 have been neglecting for years. And what happens when you finally train them correctly? You do not want to miss that one. Subscribe, and I will see you there.